Are you afraid?
It was supposed to be a reset. My phone had died days ago, and the last sign of civilization was miles behind me. Just me, my pack, and the deep, silent woods of the Pacific Northwest. I'd planned this trip for months, charting a route far beyond the typical tourist trails, seeking that profound solitude you only find when you're truly, completely alone. The first few days were incredible. The air was crisp, the scent of pine needles and damp earth was invigorating, and the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a distant bird. My muscles ached in a satisfying way, and my mind, usually a chaotic mess of deadlines and worries, was finally starting to quiet. I was making good time, even though I often stopped to just take it all in. I had marked a few potential campsites on my map, deep in the less-traveled sections of the forest. The goal was to reach an old fire lookout trail, long abandoned, where I hoped to spend a night or two before heading back. On the fourth evening, I found a decent spot near a small, gurgling stream. I set up my tent, built a small fire, and cooked a simple meal. As twilight deepened, the forest sounds seemed to shift. The cheerful chirps of the daytime birds were replaced by the rustles and distant hoots of nocturnal creatures. I was rummaging through my pack for my headlamp when my fingers brushed against something unexpected. It was a small, ornate hand mirror, the kind with a tarnished silver frame. I didn't recognize it. I was certain I hadn't packed it. My reflection stared back, a little wider, a little blurrier than I remembered. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. The back was covered in an almost alien script, symbols that looked ancient and unsettling. There was a faint chill emanating from the glass, despite the warmth of the fire. I felt wrong, like a fragment of something that didn't belong in my carefully curated gear. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe it had fallen out of someone else's pack at a previous campsite, and I'd picked it up by mistake without noticing. But the thought felt thin, a rationalization against a growing sense of unease. The mirror felt heavy, almost insistent in my palm. Without really thinking, a whispered phrase came to my lips. It was something I'd read online years ago, a silly childhood superstition about summoning a specific entity by repeating its true name into a mirror. I honestly don't know why I said it, a fleeting, foolish memory. As the last syllable left my mouth, the mirror grew noticeably colder, a sharp, icy sensation spreading through my fingers. The air around me dropped several degrees, and the faint scent of burnt hair, acrid and metallic, filled my nostrils. I dropped the mirror as if it had burned me. It landed with a soft clink on the moss. The glass wasn't broken, but it was no longer reflective. It was a dull, opaque gray, like smoked glass. And from that moment on, the woods changed. The silence deepened, becoming less peaceful and more profound, suffocating. I spent a restless night, convinced I heard things just beyond the edge of my campsite. Footsteps that sounded too heavy for any animal I knew, a soft scraping against the bark of trees, a low, guttural murmur that vibrated through the ground. I kept my headlamp off, trying to be as still and invisible as possible. When morning finally came, I packed up my tent faster than I ever had before. I didn't even bother with breakfast. I just wanted to get out. The air was still unnaturally cold, and the smell of burnt hair lingered, even miles down the trail. I felt like I was being watched, every step heavy with dread. As I hurried along the trail, I noticed something else. On the damp earth, amidst my own boot prints, were other marks. Not footprints, but long, slick indentations, like something heavy had been dragged or had poured itself across the ground. They followed the path, always a little ahead of me or just to the side. The cold intensified, causing vapor to plume from my breath even though the air wasn't freezing. The smell of burnt hair grew stronger, making my stomach churn. I started to pick up my pace, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that whatever I had foolishly called was still with me. I started to run, pushing myself to exhaustion. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the thought of stopping, of letting whatever it was catch up, was even more terrifying. The dragging marks continued, sometimes seeming to appear right after I passed, as if it was moving faster than I could perceive. I burst into a small clearing, desperate for a moment's respite, and froze. There, at the center of the clearing, was the thing. It wasn't human. It was a slick, boneless mass of pale, rubbery flesh that pours rather than steps, covered in patches of coarse black fur. Its entire surface was several degrees colder than the air around it. It had no discernible face, no human silhouette. Its eyes were swollen shut and fused into the skin, but I felt an intense, undeniable gaze fixed upon me. The acrid smell of burnt hair was overwhelming now, stinging my nostrils, making my eyes water. It pulsed slightly, like a raw, exposed organ. I couldn't move. My muscles had locked up, my mind reeling from the sheer wrongness of it. It wasn't a monster from a movie. It was a physical, tangible horror that defied all logic and reason. It oozed, slowly, impossibly, towards me, and a low, wet sound, like stones churning in mud, emanated from its mass. Then a flash of red and blue. A small bird, a brilliant tanager, darted from a nearby bush, chirping loudly. Not a panicked shriek, but an insistent, almost scolding call. It flew directly between me and the entity, then swooped past me in the direction of the trailhead, as if urging me to follow. The distraction was just enough. It broke the paralysis. I stumbled backward, away from the coiling mass, and then turned and ran, following the small, insistent bird that continued to flit ahead of me, a tiny beacon of color in the oppressive gray and green of the forest. It led me without hesitation, always just within sight, until I could faintly hear the sounds of traffic, the distant hum of a highway. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I broke free of the tree line and saw the paved road, the cars rushing by. The bird gave one last, soft chirp and vanished into the sky. I made it out. I still have no idea what that mirror was, or how it got into my pack. But I know what it unleashed, and I know that small bird saved me. I never went back into those deep woods, and I certainly never whispered its name into a mirror again. Some things are best left unknown, and some doors, once opened, are best left to close.